Michigan. 11 days after Halloween, Krista Robin Lewis kisses her cat goodbye and heads out for her evening botany class at Michigan State University. She never arrived. Inside her apartment, police found dinner still warm on the stove and her cat waiting by the door. Everything looked ordinary except for one thing. Krista was gone. Days later, searchers discover her driver's license and shattered cell phone pieces scattered along U.S. Highway 127. Investigators turned their eyes to one man, her ex-boyfriend, Brad Corna, whose car, coincidentally, broke down on that same stretch of road that night. But Brad's story hid something far darker than a coincidence. A violent past, a web of lies, and secrets that would take 15 years to unravel. Until, in 2023, the improbable finally occurred. A Michigan jury delivered a guilty verdict. This is the story of a landmark conviction and the question it left behind. How do you find closure when the victim's body has never been found? Before we continue this shocking story, take a second to hit subscribe and like this video. Your support helps bring these forgotten stories to light, and the algorithm gods will make sure you don't miss any future uploads. The November wind cuts through Lansing like a blade, carrying the scent of dying leaves and winter's promise. Krista Robin Lewis adjusts her jacket as she steps out of her apartment building, keys jingling in her hand. At 34, she moves with the quiet confidence of someone who has found her purpose. Her passion for botany fills every corner of her life, from the small herb garden on her windowsill to the greenhouse where she spends her evenings studying plant genetics. Her apartment on Michigan Avenue tells the story of a woman building something meaningful. Books on horticulture stack beside her computer. Photographs of family gatherings line the walls. Her tabby cat, Whiskers, follows her to the door with the devotion only animals can give. "I'll be back by 10, she tells him, scratching behind his ears. "Don't knock over my jade plant while I'm gone." The stove holds her half-finished dinner, pasta with marinara sauce, still warm. She planned to eat when she returned from class. The routine comforts her. Tuesday evenings at the greenhouse, surrounded by growing things and the possibility of discovery. Her cell phone buzzes. Brad Corna's name appears on the screen. She hesitates before answering. Their relationship ended months ago, but he still calls, sometimes drunk, always needy. Krista opens the call with cautious reserve. "Hey, Brad." Brad's voice is urgent and strained on the line. "Thank God. My car broke down on 127. I'm stuck near the Lansing exit. Can you help me?" She checks her watch. Class starts in 40 minutes. Krista asks, her tone strictly business. "What happened?" "Engine just died. I think it's the alternator," Brad pleads. "I know you're busy, but I don't have anyone else to call." The desperation in his voice makes her chest tight. Despite everything, some part of her still feels responsible for his problems. It's a weakness she can't quite shake. "Okay, I'll swing by on my way to class," Krista agrees, setting a strict boundary. "But I can't be late. Brad, this presentation is important." "You're a lifesaver." "I'm on the shoulder near mile marker 85. The line goes dead. Krista stares at her phone for a moment, that familiar knot forming in her stomach. Every interaction with Brad feels like walking through a minefield. She grabs her purse and heads for the door. Whiskers meows in protest. "I know, buddy. I don't like it either." Her Toyota Corolla starts on the second try. Reliable as always, she pulls onto Michigan Avenue, then merges onto US 127 southbound. She passes familiar landmarks. Mile marker 83. Mile marker 84. Her headlights sweep across the shoulder ahead, looking for Brad's broken-down Ford. She slows, squinting through the darkness. Mile marker 85. Nothing. Krista pulls over and checks her phone. No missed calls, no messages. She dials Brad's number. It rings once, twice, then goes to voicemail. Krista leaves a frustrated message. "Brad, it's me. I'm at mile marker 85 and I don't see you. Call me back." 5 minutes pass, then 10. Her presentation starts in 20 minutes. She tries his number again. Voicemail. Frustration bubbles up from her chest. This is exactly the kind of thing Brad does. Create drama, demand attention, then disappear. She pulls back onto the highway and heads toward campus. But something else happens on that dark stretch of highway. In those missing minutes, in that empty space where Brad should have been waiting, Krista Robin Lewis vanishes from the world. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. I'm always fascinated to see how far these stories travel and how they connect us across distances. Her car is found the next morning in the greenhouse parking lot, keys still in the ignition. Her presentation materials wait on the dashboard, carefully organized and never delivered. The discovery underscores the sudden, violent interruption of her life. Dawn breaks gray and cold over Lansing. Jennifer Walsh, Krista's roommate, paces the kitchen with mounting alarm. "This isn't like her," Jennifer tells the police dispatcher, her voice strained. "Krista doesn't just disappear. She would have called. She would have come home." Officer David Chen of the Lansing Police Department arrives and examines the apartment. Everything suggests interrupted routine. "When did you last see her?" Officer Chen asks Jennifer directly. "Around 7 yesterday evening. She was heading to her botany class," Jennifer replies, her voice cracking. "She goes every Tuesday night. She loves those plants more than anything. She would never miss class unless something was seriously wrong." Chen calls for a supervisor. Within hours, the apartment becomes a crime scene. Michigan State Police Detective Maria Santos arrives as the sun climbs higher. She's worked missing persons long enough to recognize the difference between voluntary departure and something darker. "Tell me about her relationships," Santos asks Jennifer, her tone professional and steady. "Boyfriend? Ex-boyfriend? Anyone who might want to hurt her?" Jennifer's face darkens. "Brad Cornier. They dated for about 6 months last year. He was intense, possessive. She broke it off when he started getting violent." Santos leans forward slightly. "Violent? How?" "He grabbed her once during an argument, left bruises on her arms," Jennifer recounts with chilling clarity. "After that, she was done. But he kept calling, kept showing up places. She was scared of him." Santos makes notes. "The pattern feels familiar. Do you know where we can find him?" she asks, not looking up from her pad. Jennifer pauses, thinking. "He lives in a trailer park off Cedar Street. Krista said he was always getting in trouble with the law." While Santos interviews Jennifer, other MSP officers canvass the greenhouse. Professor Helen Wilson confirms that Krista never arrived for class, adding, "She's my most dedicated student. Never missed a session in 2 years. Traffic cameras capture her Toyota leaving her complex at 7:15 p.m. After that, the digital trail goes cold. By Thursday morning, volunteers begin gathering at the Lansing Police Department as Krista's disappearance spreads through social media and local news. Detective Santos drives to the Cedar Street trailer park. Brad's trailer sits empty. A neighbor emerges from the adjacent trailer. "You looking for Brad?" the neighbor asks. "He ain't been around since Tuesday night." "Tuesday night? You sure about that?" Santos presses, her pulse quickening. "Yeah. Saw him leave around 6:30, driving that piece of Ford. Engine was making terrible noises." Tuesday night, the same night Krista disappeared, Santos leaves her card and returns to the station. That afternoon brings the first breakthrough. A motorist calls to report finding a driver's license on the shoulder of US 127 near mile marker 85. The name on the license, Krista Robin Lewis. Santos and Eaton County Sheriff's deputies raced to the location. The license lies in tall grass, as if thrown from a moving vehicle. Nearby, they discover more debris, fragments of a cell phone scattered like broken promises. The phone is damaged but recoverable. Its recovered call log shows that final call to Brad Corner at 7:23 p.m., lasting 2 minutes and 15 seconds. It was the last time anyone would hear her voice. The pieces fall into place with terrible clarity. "She came out here to help him," Santos concludes, her voice flat. "Just like he asked." "Where is she now?" Santos stares at the empty highway. "That's what we need to find out." Brad Corner becomes the prime suspect. His trailer sits empty. His Ford is nowhere to be found. He's vanished as completely as Krista, but voluntarily. On Friday, Santos gets a call that changes everything. A state trooper has found Brad's abandoned Ford in a rest area near Grand Rapids, 60 miles from Lansing. The car shows signs of mechanical failure, a blown alternator, just as he'd claimed to Krista. But inside the vehicle, investigators discover something that makes Santos's blood run cold. Krista's purse, hidden under the driver's seat, her wallet intact, money untouched. A small framed photograph of her and Whiskers tucked in the side pocket. The purse transforms the case from missing person to probable homicide. Santos spends the weekend diving into Brad Corney's criminal history. What she found made her sick. Multiple arrests for sexual assault, including the rape of a teenager in 2003, convictions for child abuse that sent him to prison for 18 months, and failure to register as a sex offender, a violation that should have kept him behind bars. "This guy is a predator," Santos tells her lieutenant, her voice low with disgust. "And somehow he slipped through the cracks." The lieutenant's response is immediate and blunt. Find him before he hurts someone else. But Brad has disappeared into the American underground of trailer parks, cash jobs, and assumed names. The search spreads across 3 states, aided by wanted posters and media attention. Meanwhile, Lansing grieves. Krista's friends organize candlelight vigils at the greenhouse, the place where she spent her happiest hours. Her plants wait in their pots, carefully tended by Professor Wilson and a team of volunteers who refuse to let them die. Jennifer maintains the apartment exactly as Krista left it, unable to accept that her roommate won't walk through the door with an apologetic smile. Whiskers sleeps on Krista's bed every night, waiting for a return that will never come. The search for Krista's body begins with ground teams combing the forests along US 127. Cadaver dogs work the areas near where her license was found. Divers search ponds and quarries within a 50-mile radius. They find nothing. November becomes December, and winter settles over Michigan like a burial shroud. The searches grow more difficult as snow covers potential grave sites. The media attention fades, the volunteers drift back to their normal lives. But Krista's family refuses to give up. Her mother, Patricia, drives from Detroit every weekend to meet with investigators. Her brother, James, posts missing person flyers throughout mid-Michigan. They appear on local television, pleading for information. "Someone knows what happened to our daughter," Patricia says during a tearful December news conference. "Someone saw something. Someone knows where she is. Please, we're begging you. Help us bring Krista home." The holidays pass in a haze of grief and desperate hope. Christmas comes and goes with an empty chair at the family table. New Year's Eve finds Patricia sitting in Krista's apartment, holding Whiskers, and staring at the cold stove where dinner still sits, now molded and forgotten. Detective Santos works through the holidays following leads that go nowhere. Anonymous tips from psychics. False sightings from people who mistake other women for the missing botanist. Dead ends that mock the investigation's urgency. In January, the case officially goes cold. Santos is assigned to new investigations. Though she checks Brad Corney's name in the database every morning, he remains a ghost. Disappeared as thoroughly as if the earth had swallowed him. The first anniversary of Krista's disappearance brings renewed media attention and another round of searches. Volunteers return to comb areas missed during winter. New tips trickle in, each one carefully investigated and ultimately dismissed. A $50,000 reward is offered for information leading to Brad's arrest. Spring arrives with cruel beauty. Krista's plants in the greenhouse bloom and grow, tended by students who never knew her, but who understand the importance of keeping something alive in her memory. Her research is published posthumously. Detective Santos is promoted to sergeant within the Michigan State Police, but continues working Krista's case whenever possible. She interviews Brad's former associates, mines social media, and tracks every rumor of his whereabouts. In September, almost a year after the disappearance, Santos gets a break. A tip from Cleveland leads to an arrest. Not Brad, but a man who claims to know where he's hiding. The informant, a methamphetamine dealer named Tony Ree, tells a story that makes Santos's heart race. Ree met Brad at an Ohio truck stop 3 months after Krista vanished. Brad was drunk and paranoid, talking about the girl from Lansing and how they'll never find her. He said he put her somewhere they'd never look, Reese tells investigators. Somewhere special, he called it. Somewhere that meant something to him. Santos and her team immediately begin researching locations connected to Brad's past. His childhood home, construction jobs, properties owned by relatives. They find nothing. The second anniversary brings another vigil, smaller but no less determined. Krista's family has aged visibly, worn down by 2 years of false hopes. "We will find her," James tells the gathered crowd, his voice rare with resolve. "We will bring our sister home, and we will make sure Brad Cornea pays for what he did." Behind the scenes, prosecutors quietly began the daunting task of building a case without a body. Juries typically demand physical remains, but the indirect evidence against Brad grew stronger with every passing month. The prosecution's legal strategy started to take definitive shape, focusing on the totality of evidence. This included cell phone records that placed Brad in the exact highway area where Krista's license was later discovered. Motive and desperation, established through witness statements of Brad's severe financial distress and his criminal history, which established a chilling pattern of violence against women. The case would argue that this evidence proved not just that Krista was dead, but that Brad killed her with premeditation. The calculated phone call to lure her, the staged car trouble, and the deliberate disposal of her purse and phone to cover his tracks. But first, the priority remained unchanged. They needed Brad in custody. 3 years pass like water through a sieve, bringing new pain and old hopes. Sergeant Santos has worked dozens of cases, but Krista's photograph still sits prominently on her desk, a daily reminder of unfinished business. Brad Corner remains a phantom, his name whispered in trailer parks and dive bars across the Midwest. Sightings come from Florida, Texas, Oregon, always just out of reach. In 2012, the case receives new attention when a documentary filmmaker approaches Krista's family. The resulting film, Finding Krista, airs on the Investigation Discovery Network and generates hundreds of new tips. Most lead nowhere, but one catches Santos's attention. A woman in Tennessee claims her neighbor matches Brad's description. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation conducts surveillance for 2 weeks before determining it's a false lead. Each false lead feels like a small death to Krista's family. Patricia has retired from her job to focus full-time on finding her daughter. James has divorced, unable to balance his obsession with the case and his marriage. The greenhouse at Michigan State has been renamed the Krista Lewis Memorial Greenhouse. Her plants have been replaced by memorial displays, but her research lives on through graduate students who continue her work on sustainable agriculture. Professor Wilson retires in 2013, but not before establishing the Krista Lewis Scholarship for women studying botany. Krista saw the world through the eyes of someone who understood that every living thing has purpose, Wilson tells the gathered crowd at the dedication ceremony. Her work on drought-resistant crops could have fed thousands. Her murder robbed not just her family, but humanity itself. The word murder hangs in the air like smoke. In 2014, the Michigan State Police assigns a new detective to review cold cases. MSP Detective Robert King approaches Krista's file with fresh eyes. Modern cell phone tower data from 2008, previously too expensive to analyze, now reveals a more detailed picture of that November night. Brad's phone pinged towers in a pattern consistent with driving south on US 127, then disappearing for 3 hours before reappearing near Grand Rapids. Those missing 3 hours represent the time when Krista died and was buried. King orders ground-penetrating radar searches of properties along Brad's likely route. The technology has improved dramatically since 2008. The searches turn up nothing but hope. Each scan keeps the case alive in the public consciousness. Local newspapers ran anniversary stories. Social media groups dedicated to finding Krista gained thousands of followers. In 2016, genetic genealogy emerged as a powerful tool in cold cases. Though investigators had no DNA evidence linking Brad to the disappearance, they began building detailed family trees for both victim and suspect, hoping to find missed connections. The work was painstaking and ultimately fruitless. The families had no known intersections. Meanwhile, Brad's trail grew colder. His mother, his only remaining close relative, died in 2015. Detective King interviewed every person on that shrinking list: former cellmates, drinking buddies, construction supervisors who paid Brad under the table. The portrait that emerged was of a man consumed by rage and paranoia, capable of extreme violence. When cornered, he talked about women like they were objects. One former friend told King, said they existed to serve men, and any woman who fought back deserved what she got. He scared the hell out of me, and I'm not easily scared. The interviews revealed something else troubling, a pattern of escalating violence. Multiple women reported being assaulted or threatened by Brad in the years before Krista's disappearance, but none reported the incidents to police. Krista wasn't his first victim, but investigators suspected she may have been the one who fought back too hard. In 2017, advances in cell phone forensics allowed investigators to recover deleted text messages from Krista's damaged phone. The messages painted a disturbing picture of her final weeks. Brad had been stalking her, showing up at her workplace, following her to class, and calling her dozens of times daily. The texts revealed Krista's growing fear and frustration. "Please leave me alone," she wrote 2 days before her disappearance. "I don't want to see you anymore. Stop calling." Brad's responses escalated from pleading to outright threatening. The final message sent on the morning of November 11th chilled investigators to the bone. "You can't hide from me forever." Detective King presented the new evidence to the prosecutor's office in early 2018. The case for murder without a body grew stronger with each piece of the puzzle, but District Attorney Margaret Walsh remained hesitant. "Juries want to see bodies," Walsh told King during a strategy meeting. "They want physical proof of death. Everything we have is circumstantial." "It's overwhelming circumstantial evidence," King argued. "No one disappears this completely without help. She's dead, and Brad killed her." Walsh agreed to keep building the case, but she wouldn't commit to prosecution without more evidence. The investigation continued, now in its 10th year. The 2018 anniversary vigil drew the largest crowd since the first year. Krista's story resonated in the era of #MeToo, another example of male violence against women going unpunished. Patricia Lewis, now visibly frail but still determined, addressed the crowd with words that would be quoted for years. "My daughter is not just a statistic. She is not just another missing woman. She is Krista Robin Lewis, and she matters. Her life mattered. Her death matters. And someday, somehow, we will get justice." 3 weeks later, Detective King got a call that changed everything. A man in Arizona, Michael Sutton, claimed to be Brad Cornier's cousin and had information about what happened to Krista. He was drunk at the funeral reception, Sutton told King over the phone. Started rambling about some girl who wouldn't leave him alone. Said he had to shut her up permanently or she would ruin his life. The cousin's story remained consistent, providing the strongest evidence yet of Brad's guilt, but still no clue to his whereabouts or Krista's burial site. In 2019, the case gained another boost when the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit offered to create a detailed profile. FBI agent Sarah Coleman, specializing in missing persons, spent weeks studying Brad's history and psychology. "He's not sophisticated enough for extensive body disposal," Coleman advised the investigative team. "He would have buried her quickly, probably within an hour of death. The location would be somewhere he knew well, somewhere he'd been before." The profile led investigators back to Brad's childhood haunts in rural Ingham County. His grandfather's abandoned farm became a focus. Ground-penetrating radar revealed anomalies, but excavations yielded only animal remains and old fence posts. By 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic put many cold case investigations on hold. The isolation gave Detective King time to think differently. He began mapping every location associated with Brad's life. The map revealed a pattern. Most of Brad's known activities clustered around a 15-mile radius south of Lansing. Within that circle lay dozens of potential burial sites. Meanwhile, prosecutor Margaret Walsh was replaced by a younger, more aggressive district attorney named David Chen. The same David Chen who, as a police officer, responded to Krista's apartment 13 years earlier. Chen ran for office partly on a platform of solving cold cases. One of his first acts as DA was to convene a grand jury to review the evidence against Brad Corna. The grand jury met for 3 days in March 2021. They heard testimony, reviewed phone records, and examined Brad's criminal history. On March 18, 2021, nearly 13 years after Krista's disappearance, the grand jury returned an indictment charging Brad Corna with first-degree premeditated murder. The news hit Lansing like a thunderbolt. Patricia Lewith collapsed in tears when Detective King called with the news. Patricia whispered, "Finally, someone will pay for what they did to my baby." The indictment was only the first step. The renewed manhunt began immediately. Brad's photo appeared on wanted posters across the country. The FBI added him to their most wanted list, and the reward increased to $100,000. Tips began pouring in from across America, clustering around areas with large populations of transient workers, agricultural regions, oil fields, and construction boom towns. "He's probably using a fake name, doing day labor for cash," King told the task force. "He could be anywhere, working any job that doesn't require background checks." The search continued through the summer of 2021. In September 2021, 18 months after the indictment, investigators got the call they'd been waiting for. Brad Corna had been arrested in Pueblo, Colorado, living under the name Robert Carson and working construction for a local contractor. The arrest was anticlimactic. No high-speed chase, no dramatic confrontation, just a routine traffic stop that turned into the end of one of Michigan's longest-run manhunts. Brad had aged badly during his years on the run. His hair was gray, his face lined and weathered. He weighed 50 pounds less than his 2008 mugshot, hollowed out by years of paranoia. When Colorado State Police told him about the Michigan warrant, he didn't seem surprised. The extradition process took 2 months. Brad fought it initially, then surrendered. On December 15, 2021, he landed at Lansing Airport in shackles. Detective King watched from the observation deck. After 13 years of hunting this man, he expected satisfaction. Instead, he felt only sadness for what could have been prevented. Brad's first court appearance drew a packed gallery. Krista's family sat in the front row. Patricia stared at the man, trying to understand how this broken shell destroyed her world. The judge denied bail, citing Brad's history of flight and the severity of the charges. He was remanded to the Ingham County Jail to await a trial scheduled for June 2023. The 18-month gap between arrest and trial gave prosecutors time to build their case methodically. Every piece of evidence had to be perfect. There would be no second chances. June 5, 2023. The Ingham County Courthouse buzzed with energy. News crews set up cameras on the steps. Krista Robin Leith's family arrived early, dressed in their best clothes. Patricia walked with a cane, her health deteriorated by 15 years of stress and grief. James supported her arm through the crowds. District Attorney David Chen spent months preparing for this moment. His prosecution team included Detective King, now retired but serving as a consultant, and FBI analyst Sarah Coleman. The defense, led by veteran criminal defender Amanda Torres, faced an uphill battle. Their strategy centered on the oldest principle in criminal law: no body, no crime. Jury selection took 3 days. Brad sat at the defense table in a rumpled suit, his hands cuffed to a chain. He rarely looked at Krista's family, keeping his eyes fixed on the table. On June 8th, the gallery fell silent as Chen rose to deliver his opening statement. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Chen began, his voice quiet but commanding. "This case is about a phone call. A phone call made on November 11th, 2008 that lured Krista Robin Lewis to her death." He moved with quiet confidence. The defendant called Krista at 7:23 p.m., claiming his car had broken down. He knew she was kind. He knew she would come help even though their relationship had ended. He used her compassion against her. Chen outlined the evidence methodically. Then, his voice rising with rhetorical power, he challenged the jury. "The defense will tell you that without a body, you can't be certain Krista is dead. But ask yourselves this: where is Krista Robin Lewis? Why did she abandon her cat, her plants, her research, her family who loved her? The only answer that makes sense is the truth. She's dead, and the defendant killed her." Amanda Torres approached the jury with a different demeanor, skeptical, questioning, focused on doubt. The prosecution wants you to convict my client of murder based on assumptions, theories, and coincidences, Torres countered. But this is America, and in America, we don't convict people of murder without proof. Torres offered alternative explanations. Maybe Krista staged her own disappearance. Maybe someone else killed her after she left Brad's location. The prosecution has spent 15 years trying to make these puzzle pieces fit together, but they don't. There are too many gaps, too many unknowns. And in a murder case, unknown means not guilty. The prosecution's case unfolded over 8 days of testimony. MSP Lieutenant Maria Santos took the stand first, walking the jury through the initial investigation. Krista's apartment told a story, Santos testified, her voice steady. Food still warm on the stove, her cat hungry and agitated. Everything indicated a woman who intended to return home that night. Under cross-examination, Torres pressed Santos about the lack of physical evidence at the apartment. "You searched that apartment thoroughly, didn't you, Detective?" "Yes, we did," Santos confirmed. Torres delivered her key point, her voice dropping slightly. "And you found no evidence that any crime took place there?" "That's correct," Santos acknowledged, her tone unwavering. "We believe the crime occurred on Highway 127. Torres continued to press. "But you don't know that, do you? You're speculating." Santos kept her composure. "Based on where we found her license and phone, yes, I believe that's where she was killed." Jennifer Walsh, Krista's former roommate, testified about Krista's reluctance to go, explaining she didn't want to go but she felt guilty. Krista always felt responsible for other people's problems, especially Brad's. The phone records expert detailed the technical evidence. The final call lasted 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Cell tower data placed both phones at mile marker 85 on US 127 between 7:30 and 7:45 p.m. After 7:45, Krista's phone went silent forever. Brad's phone reappeared near Grand Rapids around 11 p.m. The forensic evidence from Brad's abandoned car provided some of the most damning testimony. Krista's purse, containing her wallet, keys, and personal items, things no woman would willingly abandon, was found hidden under the driver's seat. FBI behavioral analyst Sarah Coleman explained Brad's profile. "Men, like the defendant, often kill their ex-partners when they feel they're losing control," Coleman explained to the jury. "They view the woman as property that belongs to them." Torres attacked the profile on cross-examination. "You never met my client, did you, Dr. Coleman?" "No, I did not," Coleman replied. "You never interviewed him or conducted any psychological evaluation?" Torres pressed, her voice demanding certainty. "No, but I reviewed extensive evidence about his behavior patterns," Coleman responded firmly. Torres delivered her final, devastating strike, her voice rising with righteous indignation. "So this profile is based on assumption and theory, not direct observation. Dr. Coleman, you are asking this jury to convict a man of murder based purely on a well-researched opinion, a sophisticated hunch. Isn't that correct?" A visible flicker of strain crossed Coleman's face, but she held her composure, looking directly at the jury. "It's based on established patterns of behavior in similar cases, a blueprint of violence. It explains why the defendant acted when the physical evidence only shows what he did." Torres simply stared at the witness for a long, silent beat, then turned and returned to the defense table, allowing the silence to hang over the courtroom like a heavy weight. The prosecution's final witness was Detective King, whose testimony spanned 2 full days covering the 15-year manhunt and the mountain of evidence. King's voice broke slightly when he discussed the impact on Krista's family. "They never gave up hope, never stopped fighting for their daughter," King stated, his emotion clear. "They deserved answers, and they deserved justice." Under cross-examination, Torres focused on the investigation's failures, the lack of physical evidence, the inability to find Krista's body, and the 13-year delay in bringing charges. "Detective King, in 15 years of investigation, you never found a single drop of Krista's blood, did you?" Torres demanded. "No," King answered. She continued, pressing hard on the physical gaps. "You never found DNA evidence linking my client to any crime?" "No." You never found the alleged murder weapon? No. Torres paused for maximum effect. In fact, you don't even know how Krista allegedly died, do you? King paused before answering, acknowledging the factual difficulty. No, we don't know the specific cause of death. The prosecution rested its case on June 19th. The evidence filled dozens of boxes, but at its center lay an absence: Krista Robin Leth herself. The defense case began immediately. Torres called only 3 witnesses, focusing strictly on creating doubt. A private investigator testified about missing person cases where individuals vanished voluntarily, suggesting Krista could still be alive. However, under prosecution cross-examination, the investigator admitted his testimony was purely theoretical, and he had found no evidence that Krista disappeared voluntarily. The defense's second witness, a forensic expert, questioned the cell phone evidence, suggesting the damaged phone could have been tossed by someone other than Brad. But the expert's credibility collapsed when Chen revealed he'd been paid $50,000 for his testimony and lacked specific expertise in cell phone forensics. Brad's sister took the stand as the final defense witness. Through tears, she portrayed him as troubled but not violent. "He couldn't hurt anyone," she pleaded to the jury. "He's just weak and scared." Under cross-examination, Chen forced her to admit she hadn't spoken to Brad in over a decade and knew nothing about his relationship with Krista. Torres considered putting Brad on the stand, but ultimately decided against it. The defense rested after just 2 days of testimony. Closing arguments began on June 22nd. Chen spoke first, summarizing the prosecution's case with passion and precision. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chen asserted, "this case is about a predator who couldn't accept that his relationship was over. Brad Cornea used Krista's kindness against her, luring her to an isolated location where he killed her and disposed of her body." Chen walked through the evidence chronologically, forming an unbreakable chain of guilt. The defense wants you to believe Krista voluntarily disappeared. But ask yourselves, what kind of woman abandons a cat she adored? What kind of daughter causes her family 15 years of agony without sending a single word? Chen's voice rose with powerful emotion. Krista Robin Lewis was murdered on November 11th, 2008. The evidence proves it beyond any reasonable doubt. The only question left is whether you'll give her family the justice they've waited 15 years to receive. Torres delivered a passionate defense closing, emphasizing the lack of physical evidence and the dangers of convicting based on suspicion. The prosecution has painted a compelling story, but stories aren't evidence, Torres declared. They've asked you to fill in gaps with assumptions, to ignore reasonable doubt in favor of closure, she concluded with a direct appeal. If you have any doubt at all, you must find my client not guilty. That's not just the law, that's justice. Chen delivered the prosecution's rebuttal, arguing, "The defense talks about reasonable doubt, but there's nothing reasonable about ignoring overwhelming evidence. Every piece of evidence points to one conclusion. Brad Cornea murdered Krista Robin Lewis." The jury received their instructions on June 23rd and began deliberations. Krista's family waited in the victim's services office. Hours passed with no word. Deliberations continued into the next day. On the afternoon of June 24th, word spread. A verdict had been reached. The gallery filled quickly. Brad sat at the defense table, looking pale and defeated, his hands shaking. Krista's family occupied the front row, holding hands. Judge Martinez called the court to order. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The foreman, a middle-aged accountant, stood slowly. The bailiff delivered the verdict to Judge Martinez, who read it silently. The seconds stretched like hours. "Will the defendant please rise?" Brad stood unsteadily, supported by his attorneys. His face was gray as ash. "Members of the jury, how do you find?" The foreman's voice carried clearly through the silent courtroom. "We find the defendant, Brad Cornea, guilty of murder in the first degree." The word guilty hit the courtroom like a physical force. Patricia collapsed into James's arms, sobbing. 15 years of grief and relief pouring out. Brad sank back into his chair, showing no visible reaction. The decision was unanimous. Sentencing was scheduled for September 15th. The courthouse steps became a scene of celebration. Patricia Lewis addressed the media. Today, justice was finally served for our daughter. Krista can rest in peace, knowing her killer will never hurt anyone else. But she acknowledged the partial victory. We still don't know where Krista is buried. Our fight isn't over until we bring our daughter home. The conviction had reinvigorated the hunt for her remains. In October 2023, 6 weeks after sentencing, investigators received a tip from a prison inmate claiming Brad told him about burying the girl near a hunting cabin in Shiawassee County. The intensive 2-week search involved dozens of officers and excavation equipment. It found nothing. The tip was false, but it was a reminder that the case wasn't truly closed. Winter arrived early in Michigan. The hunt for Krista's remains entered its 16th year. At Thanksgiving 2023, Patricia gathered her family around a table that still had an empty chair. They said grace for justice served, but prayed for the day they could finally lay Krista to rest. The Krista Lewis Memorial Greenhouse continued her research. James had remarried and started the Krista Lewis Foundation to help families of missing persons. Detective King, now in his 70s, still drove the back roads of mid-Michigan, looking for signs of disturbed earth, a personal mission, a promise to a victim he never knew. On the 15th anniversary of Krista's disappearance, November 11, 2023, Patricia was at the Memorial Greenhouse as she had been every year. "We miss you every day, baby girl," she whispered to Krista's photograph. But we got him. Life continued as Krista would have wanted. Outside the greenhouse, snow began to fall on Lansing. Somewhere beneath that same snow, in a place known only to Brad Corna and perhaps God, Krista Robin Lewis waits to be found. Her killer sits in a prison cell, beginning his first winter of many behind bars. He maintains his innocence, but the truth is written in phone records and burial sites in the tears of a family that never stopped fighting for justice. The case that captivated Michigan for 15 years is officially closed. Justice has been served even without a body to bury. Yet Patricia Lewis continues to search, driven by a mother's love and an unquenched hope that someday, somehow, her daughter will come home. Until that day arrives, Krista's story remains unfinished. Thanks for being here and listening. Don't forget, hit the bell for our latest stories. Stay safe and take care of your loved ones.